Hi, good morning, everyone. This is lesson 6. We are going to skip lesson 5 for now. So we are on page 13 in your note packets. We're going to take some fill in the blanks a little bit. So we're trying to find relative frequency. What that really is you're trying to make a prediction about what's going to happen in the future. And we're going to use proportions to do this. We did this last week a little bit. So let's fill in the blanks here. It says to make I'm going to say prediction. To make a prediction based on theoretical probability, what should happen, we talked about that last week. We use, I'm just going to put relative frequency, and this is the same thing as up here. To use relative frequency to make long-term prediction of an event, multiply the probability of the number of trials. Okay, it's going to be a little bit clearer when I do the examples. Like I said, we've done this before. So let's get to the example. So you have a spinner here. And let's see what it says. If you spin the spinner 400 times, how many times can you expect to land on a 3 or a 6? So we've got to find the theoretical probability. We're not doing an experiment. So let's find the 3 and the 6. I like to circle the 3 and the 6. There's my numbers, and the total is 8. Total number of sections is 8. So theoretical, there's two numbers that are 3 and 6. 2 out of how many? Over 8. And we talked about this also last week. Let's see if we can reduce our fraction. So there's our proportion. And don't forget, proportions are part over whole. So we're going to use the 1/4. Now, what are we going to do with that 1/4? If I spun it once, the probability of landing on a 3 and a 6 is 2 out of 8, which is 1/4. Now, what they want you to do is spin it 400 times. So your 400 is going to go into your denominator. Okay, so there's two ways you could do this. You could cross multiply, which is what we did last week, equals 400. And then you know how to finish it. You divide by 4, and then x equals 100. Now, what does that 100 mean? That means it's an estimate that if we spun the spinner 400 times, we would land on 3 or 6 approximately 100 times. But I want to go back to this proportion. There's an easier way. This way works sometimes it doesn't work. If you see how many times 4 goes into 40, or what times 4 gives you 400, 400, it's times 100. So if you do times 100 up here, you're going to get that 100. This way does not always work. Cross multiplying does work. Okay, so that's example 1. Let's go to sample 2. This is our dice. We worked with this last week a lot. If you roll the number cube 300 times, how many times can you expect to land on a number greater than 2? So what I like to do is write out the numbers of a dice. So this one says greater than 2. We talked about this a lot last week. What does it mean by greater than 2? It does not include 2. So you're talking these 4 numbers here. So let's set it up. 4 out of 6, which reduces to 2/3 divided by 2. So I'm going to use the 2/3. Now, numbers greater than 2 are 2 out of 3, and they want us to spin it, our part over whole, 300 times. How many times would we expect to land on these 4 numbers if we spun it 300 or rolled it 300 times? 600 divided by 3. I'm running out of room. X equals 200. What does that 200 mean? We can expect to land on a 3, 4, 5, or a number greater than 2, 200 times if we spun it 300 times, or rolled it 300 times. Again, look here, you can also do times 100 here, and then times 100 up here. Oops. Okay, that would give you the 200. So that way works also with this particular example. Example 3, let's look at the spinner. Now, let's notice you've got 2 sections here, and then I've got 3 larger sections here. All of these sections need to be even. And look, these larger sections are only 1 letter. So to get them even with these 2, I'm going to cut this section in half. I'm going to cut this section in half. And I'm going to cut this section in half. Now, these are pretty even, I guess. So let's see how many sections we have now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have a total of 8 sections. Now let's read the question. If you spun the spinner 500 times, how many times would you expect to land on the letter B? So we got to find B. There's B. Now there's 2 sections for B. Now there's not just 1, there's 2. 2 sections out of 8. And again, you can reduce that by 2, 1/4. So let's use 1/4 in our proportion. If you spun the spinner 500 times, how many times would you expect to land on a letter, on the letter B? So this is our setup right here. Now I'm looking, it would probably work out this way, but I want to do it this way again. 4x equals 500 divided by 4, and x equals 125. Okay. Again, I think this way will work, but I'm going to go ahead and just cross multiply. Let's talk about what that 125 means. Well, if we've spun it 500 times, we can expect, it doesn't have to happen, to land on letter B at up to 125 or close to 125. Again, let's go back to the spinner. I had to make sure all these sections were equal. So I had to divide these sections into 2. Okay, one more on this front side. It said spinner again. Let's look at our spinner. Same thing here. I've got to take these and make them evenly distributed throughout. So let's count the sections. Again, I'm sure it's going to be 8. Okay, 8 sections. Again, I'm going to put an 8 right there to remind me. Let's read the question. If you spun the spinner 500 times, how many times can you expect to land on a constant? Now, it's kind of the same question here, but a little bit different what they want you to do. A constant is a letter that is not a vowel. So I'm looking at A is a vowel, E is a vowel, B is a constant, C is a constant, D. So I'm looking, now watch this. I've got B, C, and D as my constants. We got to figure out how many sections for those 3 letters. It's easy to say it's 3 sections, but let's count it. 1, 2, 3. There's 4 sections that are constant out of 8. I'm going to reduce that to 1/2. So let's set our proportion up. If you spun it 500 times, how many times can you expect to land on a constant? So I did 1/2 because it was 4 out of 8, reduced it. 500, it goes in your part over whole. I'm going to put this again. And then our x is how many times can we expect to land on a constant? So let's cross multiply. 2x equals 500 divided by 2. X equals 250. Now let's see what that means. If I spun it 500 times, I can expect to approximately land on a constant, which is a half of our spinner, 250 times. Okay, so those are the 4 word problem examples. We do have a backside. I'm going to do a separate video for the page 14.